lightsabers are one of my favorite sounds, and in fact, it was the very first sound I made for the whole series. For some reason, after I read the script, even though my assignment was first to find a voice for Chewbacca and then a voice for R2, and then, well, maybe come up with some sounds for laser guns and other things, the lightsaber fascinated me. At that time, when the script had first come out, they had some paintings that Ralph McQuarrie had done so that there were some concepts visually of what some of these things would look like. And those pictures were very inspiring because they gave an idea of the direction we were trying to go in the look of the film. And it was inspiring to me to therefore think up sounds that might fit that kind of visual style. And I could kind of hear the sound in my head of the lightsabers, even though it was just a painting of a lightsaber. I could really just sort of hear the sound. I think maybe somewhere in my subconscious I had seen a lightsaber before. And I went to, at that time I was still a graduate student at USC, and I was a projectionist, and we had a projection booth with some very, very old simplex projectors in them. And they had an interlock motor which connected them to the system, which when they just sat there and idled made a wonderful humming sound, and it would slowly change in pitch, and it would beat against another motor. There were two motors, and they would harmonize with each other. And it was kind of that inspiration. That sound was the inspiration for the lightsaber, and I went and recorded that sound. But it wasn't quite enough. It was just a humming sound. What was missing was kind of a buzzy, sparkling sound, the scintillating element which I was looking for. And that I found one day by accident. I was carrying a microphone across the room between recording. I was recording something over here, and I walked over here with the microphone, passed by a television set which was on the floor, which was on at the time, without the sound turned up, but the microphone passed right behind the picture tube, and as it did, this particular microphone produced an unusual hum. It picked up transmission from the television set, and a signal was induced into its sound reproducing mechanism. And that was a great buzz, actually. So I took that buzz, recorded it, and combined it with the projector motor sound, and that, the 50-50 kind of combination of those two sounds became the basic lightsaber tone, which was then, once we had established this tone of the lightsaber, of course you had to get the sense of the lightsaber moving, because characters would carry it around, they'd whip it through the air, they would, of course, thrust and slash at each other in fights. And to achieve this additional sense of movement, I played the sound over a speaker in a room, just the humming sound, the humming and buzzing combined is an endless sound, and then took another microphone and waved it around in the air next to that speaker so that it would come close to the speaker and go away. You could whip it by. And what happens when you do that by recording with a moving microphone is you get a Doppler shift, you get a pitch shift in the sound, and therefore you can produce a very authentic facsimile of a moving sound, and therefore it gave the lightsaber a sense of movement, and it worked well on screen at that point. The walkers were a lot of fun to work on because they were big mechanical beasts, and it was a pleasure sometimes to work on just big machinery rather than just voices. And we knew the walkers were big and they were heavy and they were lumbering about, and because they were animated they had a certain rhythmic walk to them, and so the objective was to come up with a sound for the walkers to give them a real sense of mass and weight. After all, they were miniatures and they were being animated, and one of the drawbacks of animation is that it's hard to produce a sense of mass in an object. You know, if you want something to seem like it's many tons or the size of a building, it takes particularly good animation in order to create that sense of weight. But we can help that along a great deal with the proper sound. So the walker was made up of different elements. It had motors, and it had metal clunks, and it had a weapon sound. The principal sound of a foot stomping along, this very big metallic clang with kind of a rattle and a winkle to it, was the sound of a metal shearing machine, which is a big stamping machine in a factory which has rolls of metal come out of conveyor belt that just cuts them off into pieces. It's like a big chopping block for iron and steel. And Randy Tom, one of the fellows working with me at that time, he went out and recorded some of these metal shredding machines for me. He brought the recordings in. I picked parts of the recordings that I liked and made them into a rhythmic walk cycle. But in addition to just the metal shredding machine clanging along, I needed some big metallic squeaking sounds, kind of like the knee joint squeaking all the time. Every time it would lift its leg, there'd be a big sort of a moaning sound. And that I achieved by playing with the dumpster door, a dumpster that was dropped off at my house one day filled in the street to be filled with trash. I'd go out and throw the trash in it, and I'd open the lid, and it made this wonderful sound because it hadn't been oiled in its entire life. And so that dumpster became a major part of the walker as well. The sound of explosions has always been a great passion for me. And so when it came to battle scenes or the destruction of the Death Star or anything of that sort, I always got into it quite seriously and spent a lot of time recording explosions and weapons and trying to figure out ways to record them to get the maximum visceral effect out of the event. Real explosions are very difficult to record because they're so loud, and quite often they're so sudden and short in duration sound that a normal recording system doesn't get something that's very interesting. It gets a big clap or a big pop or something of that sort. If you listen to explosions often on the news, things recorded in actual warfare, sometimes it doesn't seem to have quite the body and the tone range that you are used to hearing in motion pictures. I went out and did a lot of recording of explosions. I went to White Sands Missile Range to record missiles and rockets taking off and impacting and air-to-air interceptions. I went to many military bases and recorded tanks shooting and artillery. I got myself in a situation once where I was being bombarded by howitzers from about 5 miles away, and I was in a trench, and they were dropping shells 500 feet out in front of me where my microphones were. Blew up one pair of microphones, cut cables, put some more out, ducked shrapnel, but got some great recordings, and I've repeated that experience over and over again over the years, always in a quest which I call the search for the ultimate explosion. And I've gone a great distance in this, but I don't know if I've gotten it yet.